Good afternoon and welcome to another ACY Securities Market Update. My name is Alistair Schultz and I'm going to be your host through today's trading journey. Now, as always, we've been doing at the moment with the coronavirus, we've got a little bit of an update here for you. 234,000 have got the virus now, and it is likely to obviously continue, and we've now nearly hit 10,000 dead. The biggest thing that's interesting to have a look at is that Italy now has surpassed the amount of deaths compared to what China has had in the past. And now we are seeing a leveling off, and in some instances there are zero reports of new infection in China, especially out of Wuhan at the moment. And the number of cases that Italy has is nearly half, but their death rate is starting to increase much higher. So something to be aware of on that point is that the aging population in Italy is very large and they are getting impacted the most. So moving on from that, I've got a new section for us to have a look at. There's not a great deal of news today. Charts are pretty much sideways. So we're going to have a look at what's going through the wire of news and so have a bit of a talk about that. Now, one of the things taken to note that's come across my desk has been that 50% of Chinese retailers could collapse within 6 months. Now, naturally, some of these are already occurring. We've had reports about small businesses all tending to be on the side of a collapse, but we're not sure as to how bad it's going to be. Now, the recent data that we saw from out of China wasn't real good, and I imagine that now, as opposed to the inverse of before, where it was China was shutting down factories, the rest of the world couldn't get supply, now it's a case of the rest of the world doesn't have a demand for it. So China's factories may in fact remain at low levels of production purely due to those supply and demand factors. The rest of the world now has coronavirus and it is causing problems and shutdowns and lockdowns everywhere. So something to sort of think about on that front is now that's almost the inverse reaction to where it all started and began. Now, we've also had Goldman Sachs make an article today. They have forecast that the Australian economy is going to sink by about 6%. Now, in addition to that, they've forecasted an unemployment rate of 8.5%, possibly higher, and are comparing the recession that may occur here in Australia to what has occurred during 1929 during the Great Depression. Now, that is something that does put us on our toes and gives us a little bit of concern about what the future of the Australian economy is going to look like. Now, in addition to that, I have spoken and I wrote an article not too long ago, or a blog, about having stock markets shut down and or banning of short selling. Now, in that article, I spoke through the idea that when you actually do this and you shut down or ban, it doesn't actually fix the problem. It just means that you delay the inevitable, and then you end up with a worse crash occurring as a result of it when those short sells are allowed again or when the market reopens. So Philippines have done exactly that. They closed their stock market for 2 full days. When they reopened it, they watched everything move down 24%, which is enough to sort of say, it's probably not a good idea to be closing stock markets, because really it comes down to if people want to buy or sell, then the real price is going to come from that action as opposed to closing it up and just seeing what happens when it opens. Now, the other piece of news that is interesting to see is the US distressed debt has doubled to $500 billion. Now, to put that in comparison, during the GFC, distressed debt levels were at about $250 billion. So it's doubled since then. And we're starting to run into similar economic problems now that we've just started seeing what the data that's coming in. So what is distressed debt? Well, distressed debt is the idea that when you have a loan or the chances of a loan defaulting. So they look at these loans and they go, okay, well, these ones are distressed because they've had missed payments or whatever it may be, and they all get amalgamated into sort of one category as distressed debts. Now, the idea of those there is that it's likely going to be seeing a lot of defaulting, and that is where the most risk lies in debt markets for the US. So there's going to be something we're going to have to keep an eye on, if it is in fact an amalgamation of all debts or if it is just very specific ones like it was in 2008. So have a look at that in the future. If you're really interested in it, it's really good to have an idea of it. Now, the next one that has come across my desk is the idea of credit markets also possibly being in trouble. Now, we're seeing and hearing words about the credit crunch, and there is a potential for it to be looming right over our heads at the moment. That credit crunch, or the idea of credit markets being in trouble, comes from the idea that people are actually getting money and borrowing money to keep businesses open, to pay wages, to pay salaries, to pay for the essential items and utilities that they have to have. So on that side of things, like the more you increase the debt to try and pay off something that you're not making an income for, you can run into trouble. So that is also concerning for the economy. Now, the big one that I've also seen, and you've probably seen it in the news yourself, has been about the Olympics. Now, the Olympic Committee has been saying that they're going to go ahead with Japan 2020 Olympics, but is it really advisable to do? I mean, it's also going to be difficult. I mean, unless we look at the idea that they host the Olympics and Japan's the only country that goes, Japan outright wins the Olympics, right? So perhaps that's why they want to do it. Highly unlikely, but it's more about the economy side of things. Japan actually needs the Olympics to happen. If they don't have the Olympics occur, then the increase of tourism, the increase of travel, the increase of everything else that comes with it, they're likely going to have a bit of a problem in the lead up, especially on the amount of money they've spent building Olympic facilities. It'd almost be a bit of a waste for them, and it'd leave a lot of people in the red for a long period of time to come. So how is that going to go ahead? I have my bets on the fact that they're likely going to end up with the Olympics cancelled, but we're going to have to wait and see. Either way, I can't see it being a massive turnout, and I can see a lot of athletes cancelling on what they're going to be doing. Now, today we actually have a bit of quiet market action, and there is a couple of reasons for that. There's not a lot of news in general. Coronavirus updates have been a little bit lapsed today. I think everyone is kind of getting over the fact of all the turmoil we've had for the rest of the week, so perhaps we'll see a bit more action tonight when we see London and perhaps New York open up. Now, today is also a bank holiday for Japan, being vernal equinox day, so don't expect too much during this Asian session as we're seeing on the charts now. We've also got more news coming out of Trump, and it is a tentative post. So he could speak at any time throughout today. I can't be 100% certain what it's going to be about, but you can assume it's likely going to be related to the American situation and the coronavirus and how they're going to impact on stimulus. So something to keep an eye for. I don't anticipate a time frame for it or when he's going to be making his release. So just be aware that he might speak unexpectedly today. Now, the other one is Canada. Now, later tonight, we have Canada retail sales being published. So something to keep an eye on. Again, it is worthwhile, especially if you trade the CAD, and we'll have to see what we get out of that. They're going to be interesting figures. Now, I don't believe the aspect of Canada with coronavirus is in lockdown, but of course their Prime Minister is. So keep an eye on what's going on. Have a great trading day ahead. And of course, if you have any questions on what I've said today or perhaps another video, feel free to send me an email at talk2al@acy.com. Have a great trading day.